Aloha and hello. I'm James Fenimore.
And I'm Trisha Fenimore.
And this is Holy Matrimony. You can get us on our socials. I'm at James Fenimore _.
And I'm at Trisha Fenimore. You can find the show at Holy Matrimony __. And you can also email us your questions and stories at holymatrimonypod@gmail.com. Also, look for us wherever you get your podcasts. Rumble, YouTube, Spotify. Find us on X. Find us on TikTok. Wherever you're at, we probably are there too.
And the Fenimores. Don't forget the Fenimores. You can find us there.
Yes.
Today we're brought to you by Sex Ed Reclaimed. Have you ever wondered how to talk to your kids about sex but don't quite have the words? Sex Ed Reclaimed has you covered with age-appropriate content made just for your family. Get curriculum that covers all the hard topics from a faith-based worldview. Krista Miele has educated tens of thousands of students in multiple countries to encourage organic conversations within families about a gift God created. This education was made for such a time as this, so find your curriculum today at sexedreclaimed.com. All right, today we're going to be talking about tough seasons.
Yeah, how to get through tough times together.
And tough times together is an important one because we all are going to experience it.
Yeah, I think the longer your relationship, the more, at least I've seen. So just to contextualize, we've been together since 2016 was our first date.
2016 was our first date.
Yep, we got married in late 2018.
Yes, December 2018. Are you asking me or are you telling me? Is this going to be a tough season for our relationship?
Sometimes dates escape me.
It took a while for you to remember my birthday.
Well.
And then thank you for the insurrection, because I'm a January 6th
I will
birthday.
say January 6th was quite a blessing in our relationship because I will never, ever forget his birthday ever again. Up until then, it was like January 8th, January 6th. Is it the 4th? Is it the 7th? Yeah. The numbers got a little hazy. After that day, never questioned it ever again. I will remember that. It's set in stone up here.
So, yeah, thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
Anyway, on to the topic of getting through hard seasons together.
And silver linings in those hard seasons, see? You can find them
Finding
anywhere.
beauty for ashes. Let's talk about some of the hard seasons that we've been through. Speaking of ashes, house fires among the list, but should we just rattle off the list of some of the things that we've been through?
Go for it.
Okay, so in the months leading up to our wedding in 2018, as I always remember without any sort of pause or hesitation, in the months leading up to our wedding, we actually had to fire our wedding planner. The day of our wedding, there was a tornado warning. We were on rain plan D. Immediately after our wedding, our videographer tragically passed away. And that was really traumatic. And then obviously by extension, we lost all the video and footage of our wedding. So that was like its own thing as well. And then we had like a month after we got married, we had a house fire where our house caught on fire. There was just tremendous damage. And then...
Wait. Don't skip over that. The house was supposed to go up. We had an open house. We were selling our house.
Oh, yeah. We put our house on the market.
5 days later, it was supposed to be our open house.
Yeah. And 2 days after we put it on the market, our house caught on fire. So that was like a whole thing. And then, of course, we got pregnant. And we thought that the craziest thing that could happen in early 2020 was that our kid might be born on a leap year. Come to find out,
I was hoping for it, actually.
I mean, I wasn't,
February
but that was like the craziest thing we could imagine.
But for those keeping score at home, February 29th, which was what I was hoping for in 2020. So do the math. February 29th, 2020. What happened right after that?
COVID.
Yeah,
we had our son, and about 2 weeks later, everything shut down, especially where we were in New York and living on Long Island. And so we were at ground zero in New York with a newborn, new parents.
They shut the hospital down where our son was born and turned it into a COVID hospital immediately.
Yeah, and we were one of those new parents where family couldn't visit because nobody knew what was going on. And like it was, we had the indoor-outdoor visits that you guys probably remember seeing on social media.
Yeah, like hindsight being 2020, obviously, maybe we overreacted, but in the moment,
as new parents,
you have to remember, the videos of the morgue trucks.
We knew people who worked. I was going to say, I knew nurses. Yeah. We knew nurses who worked at the hospitals, and their stories were crazy in New York. And it's like, we were new parents. I'm not going to apologize for like how we reacted, especially for me as somebody who like is already a germaphobe.
That's not why I said it. I was more saying you have to take yourself out of 2024 and pop yourself into March. We can't use
hindsight to look at what it was. Yeah, it was a very difficult season for us. And then what we didn't know then was also that our older son, was born with a seizure condition and I've never shared this before. It's a little more personal. But here we are talking about hard seasons. And that was a tremendously hard season for us because he had 5 seizures by the time he was 2.5. Simple and complex seizures for any healthcare people out there who, there's 2 different kinds. I didn't know that. Anyway, long and short of it, we've been through several hard seasons together. We've been through several hard seasons independently. I've shared on my account about my estrangement from my family that I was born into. Jimmy's had some work issues as a business owner. And it's an interesting thing to talk about difficult seasons as they relate to both of us, as in the case of our son's condition. And then as it relates to kind of impacting one of us, and then by extension, impacting the partner. Like I can think of a couple examples of that where like maybe your partner's diagnosed with something. I mean, granted, that's different, or like has a loss on their side of the family. Is it a difficult season for both, or is it uniquely impacting one more than the other for just reasons that are obvious?
Well, understanding how you have to show up for your partner if you're the individual. So in the let's start with the partner, right?
Yeah.
You're going through it together, and it could be and sometimes also, there is a partnership, and it feels like an individual. Like if one of you loses your job. Mm-hmm. That still is together,
Right, but it is impacting one more uniquely than the other. I mean,
so here's
the thing. When we discovered our son's seizure condition, we both had a very shared experience. We both experienced it very similarly. When you have a child with a health condition or a concern like that, you have that same experience. If I were to lose a job, we would experience that in different ways, I would think. Yes, there is the financial implications, but it's like I don't know.
Well, actually, let's use one of the ones that we went through together that you would think would be a similar one, but it was very different experiences, was when our house went on fire. I wasn't home at the time.
Right.
I was at work.
That's
were there.
True. I was in the house.
So for me, it felt like a very transactional, we got to get the house fixed, we got to do this, we got to do that. For you, it was a very traumatic experience.
It was very traumatic.
Because you didn't even know the house was on fire until the fire department showed up.
Right.
So we don't need to relive it because that's not what this is about. This is about them moving
We can
forward.
talk about that another time. Maybe on an extended director's cut version of this episode.
But it was the same experience. It both affected us very much so, but it affected us in very different ways.
Yeah.
And now how do we show up for each other?
The trauma of the direct experience of being in a house that was on fire
is totally different.
Yeah.
Than what I experienced.
Right.
So I didn't experience the trauma. I didn't experience that dread, that scare. You know what I mean?
Right. Avoiding certain rooms of the house because certain activities.
Once I knew you were safe and you were healthy and there was no issue with your safety, to me it was a surface level damaged issue.
Yeah.
I didn't experience any trauma.
Yeah. For me, it was weird going back into our bedroom because that was the room where I was in when the smoke was filling it. Like, it was a whole thing. So I think the question is, how do we... Let's take a thing like a shared experience. You got something going on with your kid.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, we all have things that go on with our kids. How we move through those difficult seasons, or how we move through,
You have to lean on each other. I don't think it's, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, and I apologize, I should have prepared, but there is an insane rate of like divorce, or like with couples like splitting up after the fact when they lose a child,
which is so tragic, because it's like, man, like the enemy's coming for your family, and then like
it should be the opposite. Like I don't want to say like a tragedy like that should bring you closer together, but like you should find so much strength and comfort in each other because you've experienced this together, and you should be leaning on each other, and that's what you need to find there.
But I also think that it's, as we've counseled couples who have gone through that over the course of the last year or two, what's come into play is what happens in a tough season when one person's having a good day and the other person is having a hard day and needs support. And like, does the person having a good day, relatively speaking, feel like they're being dragged down by like this obligation to be there for them? But I think it pulls in the conversation about blame that I think is really important. And it's something that you introduced me to because through the course of my life, I witnessed a lot of relationships and I participated in a lot of relationships where blame was a core way of, relating to one another. And it was you and going through a couple hard seasons and hard moments, and where you encouraged me, even in my flawed moments in those hard seasons, that showed me what grace looks like. And are we extending grace in difficult seasons, or are we assigning blame in those hard seasons?
And you have to recognize as the other person where when your spouse, even if you're in it together, when they're having that hard moment, even if you are having a great day, it stinks. Like your great day might be reminded now of this tragedy or this bad whatever you're going through, but maybe you can use that positive day to help bring their day up.
If you're here and they're here, you're going to give a little to come to the middle, but then when you're down here and they're up here, they can give it back.
And I could tell you, as a husband, as a dad, if I'm here and my family's here, 10 times out of 10, I would rather all of us be here because that is so much more of a better day for me than me here and you guys all here.
Well, and it's also like what I've noticed with you is if you're up here and I'm down here, you can't even stay up here.
Yeah.
Because it's like you feel, you know what I mean? And so it's like we can try to shield our eyes to protect our good day, but at what expense of the partnership?
Even if I go out, right, and I know you're at home and you're down low, I can't be out having a good time because it's on my mind. I know that, and even if I was selfish, I know I'm coming home to that. Just the dread that I'm coming home to that. Yeah. But
it's gonna.
But thankfully, in my heart, I'm not that person.
Right.
But it's more of she's at home. I can't be out here enjoying myself. So you try to use that positivity and meet in the middle and bring them up as much as you can and do what you can. Give them space, give them grace. Use that energy. Maybe it's make a meal. Maybe it's just have fun with your positive energy.
Yeah.
And if they're just down, all right, be down.
Yeah.
Go watch a movie on the couch. I'm gonna cook with the kids.
And for the record, he is not a cook. What would you say your dishes are? Scrambled eggs and grilled cheese?
Yeah, I make a mean grilled cheese.
But you know what? There's something about a grilled cheese that I didn't have to make that is extra special and delicious, and like just the gesture goes so far. And to keep those little things in the hard seasons. I actually once heard like it was a divorce lawyer or something, and they said that it was the little things that when the little things started to go, that was the canary in the coal mine for the divorce that might be coming. Was like they referenced this one relationship, and he would always like buy her new granola when he noticed that the bag was at halfway, and then one day she like noticed that it was 3/4, and she was like, oh, he must not have seen it, I'll just like leave it on the counter. And she said when the bag reached empty, that's when she knew the marriage was over. Because she was like, we stopped doing the little things. We stopped giving each other little cards. We stopped hugging each other hello and giving random kisses. We stop doing the little things. And I think in those hard moments, a little thing can be anything but. A little thing can be the biggest thing in that moment. And I think it's so important to extend grace to each other for how we move through difficult times and when we're having hard days and when our partners are having hard days, but also to keep those little niceties because they're not little at all.
We used to joke where, I don't know, like this isn't about fighting, it's more about getting through these hard times together, but when we would argue or be in a fight, for some reason, that's when I would always end up buying you something.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
I was like, I'd come home with like a gift, and I was like, why did I even do this? I'm mad at you. But like,
you'd bring me home like my favorite muffin, right after an argument.
It's like that's how compartmentalized it became, because like there's still that love there. There's still that, you're my wife, or at the time you were probably my fiance or whatever it was. But, it didn't matter, because that's who you are to me. Just because we're in a fight or an argument or going through a tough season, time.
Yeah.
If I'm out and I see your favorite muffin or, whatever, I'm still going to get it. I'm not going to be like,
right,
we're in a fight. This muffin doesn't exist to me anymore.
Yeah, I don't want her to have a muffin. Yeah.
So
I think that's important, and to just be that foundation and guide each other's eyes back to God, because there are going to be moments in hard seasons where you're both down, and in those moments, where will your strength and your hope come from? And that's where it becomes so pivotal to guide our eyes and guide each other's eyes up, is because yes, we can support each other, but ultimately it is God supporting us as a unit.
Yeah.
And our family, Yeah. We got to take it all to him.
And remember that it's going to end.
Yes.
The tough time is going to end. The marriage is not.
Ooh.
So don't throw the marriage out. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Get through it together. It's just an incident. It's just a tough time. It's tough as it might be, whether it's a lost job, whether it's something really drastic like a lost loved one or a lost friend, but it's eventually those feelings are going to subside. They're going to get better, but the marriage is still going to be there. So make sure that stays the cornerstone. Make sure that stays the foundation. Don't muddy those waters. Keep that consistent. Keep that the most important thing, because when you come out of it, you're going to come out of it stronger, and you're going to come out of it with so much more intensity and so much more belief that this is the thing forever.
Yeah. And I think, what was I going to say there? Oh, bless. I had it on the tip of my tongue. It's like, if you don't tend to the marriage in a hard season, you're going to come out of the hard season into another hard season, which is a marriage, a tattered marriage, on the rocks. And it's so we must tend to the foundation there.
Yeah. Yeah. Wouldn't it be wonderful that once this hard season ends, once this incident that created this hard season has subsided, to come out to a wonderful marriage, as opposed to, hey, I got a new job. I got a wonderful job, but me and my wife or me and my husband are now roommates, are estranged, and now we have to work on that. Yeah. That would be terrible.
Right.
It would be so much better. Let's celebrate this new job. Let's celebrate this new wonderful season together, and let's move forward together.
Though the hard moment feels, what's the word? Perpetual. Though the hard season may feel in it like it's never going to end, but one day we will look back on it as a mere reference point in the broader scope of our relationship. The house fire was
just rattled through them.
Yeah, these were profoundly challenging seasons in our marriage and our relationship and our lives. And now we look back on them and we just rattle them off as a list, because there's so much more to the story that it's just a chapter.
And they're on this list because some of these really were strains on our relationship. We're not perfect. We really went through tough times, and
growing pains.
Yeah, and there were times that we didn't know, and not all of them. Some of them we went through together, but some of them we really did have a tough time with, and we learned from them. And we try to, now these seasons get shorter because our marriage is stronger.
Right.
And we know we're going to get through it together. So it's true. But on the flip side, when it's one of us going through something and the other one is kind of not necessarily on the sidelines, but it's not something that they're dealing with.
Well, let's take my family estrangement if you care to.
Sure.
Because that's something that impacted me, obviously, very directly. The fact that it's been now almost 3 years into the estrangement process with my family that I was born into. And you were the partner to somebody, in that position. And you did such an amazing job giving me both space and support, grace and also guidance but not really, I think support. The main thing that I've loved about you, and I brag about you all the time on my channel, is when I'm going through a hard time or when I'm in a situation where I'm struggling, you don't give me your opinion and your assessment as the husband, as the head of the household. Like, what I mark so unique and honorable about the way you lead is the fact that you guide my eyes to God. And you say, why don't you pray and see what God has to say? And we will support you through that, whatever that is. You don't infuse your opinion, because if anything, that might make it harder on the partner. If they feel God calling them one way and their spouse calling them another, like, that would be really challenging. And that's one thing that I think is the mark of an incredible leader and somebody who is humble enough in that position. And that's literally the only reason why I would willingly follow you into war. Is like, I don't like people in positions of leadership and authority generally, but you make it easy.
I asked you to marry me. You prayed on it. You said yes. So telling you to pray on things it got me the yes.
For the record, I prayed in the moment. I didn't need to be like, I need to pray on this one. It was like he knelt down, asked the question. I said a silent prayer and relayed the answer.
But I got the yes. So why not send you in that direction every time? But it's important, because it's also very easy when you see someone you love, and I've been guilty of this. I have been, but it's very easy when you see someone you love going through it, and it's not you, and it's not something that you're dealing with, wanting to step in, wanting to fix it, wanting to argue on your behalf, wanting to fight on your behalf, wanting to say that F with that part, do all those nasty things, because that's what's,
that's the flesh.
But to push it down and to, do what
transcend
you have to do.
It
exactly.
Through God.
It's hard, but it's important, because you have to be that partner for your spouse, and you have to be there for them, because they need to work through it. It's their issue. If they ask you, listen, I can't get on the phone right now. I can't. Can you get on the phone with them and do something? Or can you, if they're tagging you in and asking you to be that person, that's one thing. But pushing them aside
and inserting yourself
is wrong. That includes your opinion, by the way. Your opinion is only welcomed when it's invited.
And when people are ready to hear it.
Yes.
I think one important thing is are we talking about the problem? Are we venting, or are we looking for solutions? Because if you meet venting with solutions, it's going to cause a fight usually.
100%.
And I think it's important to know where we're coming from and where our partner's coming from in those high emotional moments in these difficult seasons.
Yeah. And it also, it sometimes can come across as piling on. You're talking about issues that you've had with family. That's something that I think everybody can relate to on some level. I assure you that if your husband or wife is complaining about their family, you just jumping in and piling on is not a good thing. Do not do it. It is going to blow back on you. Yeah. It's not appropriate. And that
to just let them process it.
Yeah, let them talk through it. Let them do what they need to do. By the way, this is probably the best example, right? When you have a friend and they're like, "Yeah, I'm struggling with my boyfriend or my girlfriend," and you immediately yeah, get rid of that person. They're awful. And then next thing you know is, well, I was really struggling with whether or not I was going to propose, but yeah, sure. And
That's like the Seinfeld episode where Kramer breaks up with a woman and they're like, she was the worst. And then they get back together and he's like, I remember what you said. I don't forget,
Yeah. So that's because ultimately it's family. So you don't want to now all of a sudden have your spouse think, oh, my husband or wife hates my family. You don't want to be you want to say, how can I help? Yeah, tell me more. Family's tough. We all go through it. But ultimately, we love them for in whatever capacity we have.
And whatever
to love
we
them,
can. Yeah.
However we can. But jumping in and just piling on is not the right way to go about it unless you're being asked opinions and, be invited to do things. Don't insert, as you said. I think that's a great way to put it.
Well, it comes from, and it is that fleshly urge and that ego urge to I can make this right. I have all the right opinions. Sometimes the most helpful thing to do is to kind of take a step back, let the dust settle. And we are often surprised, I think, by other people's ability to see rightly when the dust settles. We don't need to be the ones always giving them the answers. Sometimes people will find the right answers if they just have enough space. And maybe if you ask the right questions or something.
That's a great point. That's a great point. I love the idea of just kind of being the shoulder to cry on, so to speak, and just being an ear. I think for them.
Standing in the gap, so to speak, and also remembering the good in the person. So I'm immediately thinking okay, if a partner loses a job, they're going to have profound self-esteem questions, questions of their own ability, probably, their role. If it's a man, what's my, role here as the provider, yada, yada. And it's there is that biblical verse, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are noble and of good rapport, think on these things. I think it's important to do that with our partners, where we're not looking at them look at this, no good, low down, lazy, sleep until, and it's can we focus on the positive about them? They are so creative. They are so ambitious. They are, they're going to bounce back. They are resilient. Because when we focus on the good in our partners, in those hard moments that are impacting them, we make it easier to remind them of that so that they can see themselves in that. And so to think on the good about your partner instead of piling on in our own minds, which is only going to bleed out through our ways of interacting with them.
Interesting. I love that. I really do. That's wonderful. Look at you.
I do it, but I do it. That's how
Well, anyway, so ultimately, I think this is where, kind of the rubber meets the road on both of these. But I think we covered everything here. Although, if you have any questions,
hit us up.
holymatrimonypod@gmail.com.
That's right. And holymatrimony ___.
And at James Fenimore _
At Trisha Fenimore.
DM us, whatever you need. We're here for you. And now it's time for my favorite part of the show. Answer the Internet. Hi, Trish. All right, this one was for you. I've been following you for a while. I've been divorced and am now in a new dating relationship with a man who is amazing. I guess that's important to remember. It's an amazing man. Let's do that. There's a lot of detail I could go into, but the main thing I wanted to ask for is for some guidance. He's addicted to nicotine. I'm on the fence as to being in a relationship with someone who has an addiction, or how to know if it's something I should just navigate through, allowing God to grow me in new ways while being in a relationship with someone who has that kind of addiction. I'd really appreciate some advice from you and James. He's done it since he's a kid. He's tried to incorporating Zyn to ease up on it. He has expressed a desire to quit, but said it would have to be on his own timing. What should I do? All right, babes, want to kick us off?
I do. First, for anyone listening who doesn't know what Zyn is, give a 10-second definition. Because I don't know.
There's not tobacco. It's almost like if you were to think of you know how people use pouches to dip?
Yeah.
Or think of it with no tobacco. So it's almost like Nicorette gum, but for
okay, for
dipping.
people.
You just
Gotcha,
stick it
gotcha.
in your mouth and you could swallow it the whole nine.
Okay, so obviously, thank you for that. Obviously, this spikes my interest as somebody in recovery for addiction. I've been in recovery for addiction since 2011, by God's grace, one day at a time. And I think what I'm about to say might get me some pushback about the conversation around addiction, but I do think that it's important. Addiction is awful. It's awful for the person experiencing it. It's awful for the people around them. But I think it's important to introduce the nuance of the spectrum of addiction as far as like, well, what is the person addicted to? For example, if you told me that the guy you were dating struggled with drinking too much or took hard drugs or did some sort of behavioral addiction, like, I don't know, should I call out like porn addiction, sex addiction?
Gambling.
Like things like that, I would be far more concerned. And my advice for you would be different, if I'm being totally honest. An addiction to nicotine is not going to be a safety risk to you where he's going to like rob you or put you in, a dangerous, illicit, illegal scenario. And it's not going to, impact, if it gets to the point where you guys get married, it's not going to impact like the faithfulness within your marriage. So the advice is going to be different. Addiction is awful. Of all the addictions to have, I've heard from people who had both alcohol and nicotine addiction that nicotine addiction was harder because it is less aggressive, so I hope that makes sense, first of all, to kind of call that out. Like, of all the addictions he could have, it's one of the better ones in one way because it's less dangerous as far as like illegal scenarios and things like that. It is more difficult, though, because it is so socially acceptable and normalized in our society. It is much harder to quit. So I just want to call that out of like, addictions on a whole. My advice, however, for anyone seeing somebody with any addiction is always going to be the same. You cannot progress in the relationship under the assumption the person is going to change. We serve an amazing God, a God where miracles are available to everybody. Statistically, however, most people don't overcome their addiction. They succumb to it. And I think that that's important to call out because if we proceed in a relationship with somebody addicted to anything, under the assumption that they're going to change, it's setting us up for failure and disappointment. Now, I'm not saying you need to end the relationship with this guy. Sounds like an amazing guy. Sounds like a self-aware guy where he's aware that he has this as a problem. He has a desire to stop, but he doesn't want to be parented by a partner. I think that's important in any relationship that we don't parent our partners. And he wants to do it in his own timing. I think that should be respected.
So I think we should zoom out 30,000 feet. Instead of talking about this as an addiction, let's just talk about this is who this person is. Okay? Because I think what you said something there is even more poignant that I think is good for advice for anybody in a relationship. You shouldn't have the expectations of changing someone you're dating. You are dating, you're in a relationship with someone, and this is who they are. And you have to accept them for who they are. Now, if they're telling you they're going to change, if they're promising you they're going to change, I think we need to understand human nature. I think we could help them want to change. I think we could support them in wanting to change. But I think we also need to know that we need to love them for who they are and accept them for who they are and say, can I be with this person for the rest of my life if they don't change? Now, I don't mean that in terms of I'm going to be with them for the next 60 years. They're going to be the same person they were at 20 years old, because that would be ridiculous.
You grow together, right?
You grow together. But I more mean in terms of like these habits that we're talking about and things like that. Is this going to be a deal breaker for you in 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, 20 years? Because you need to acknowledge and you need to accept this. There are so many people, men and women, I know women get a bad rap for this, but men too, that I can change them.
I can fix them.
Don't do that.
First of all, it's hard. I think we all can agree. It's hard enough to change ourselves, right? Like, think of that thing that you keep bringing to God in prayer, that you keep trying and working at, and it's so hard. Like, to expect somebody to be able to do that on your timetable is unreasonable, frankly. And I'm not saying that you're unreasonable. I'm saying we all do this to a certain degree, but that we shouldn't, because it's like, it's a hard thing to change in life. Definitely possible, absolutely possible, no limit to how much change can occur, but it is difficult.
In this instance, though, I think we should celebrate the positive. You found an amazing person.
You found an amazing guy.
That's your words.
Right. I mean, and I
That's hard enough.
Right. If you told me he was addicted to hard drugs, I would say run and don't look back, like, but there's something to the fact that, like, he's done this since he was a kid. Maybe there's some trauma coping mechanism there. I don't know the guy.
If this was 25 years ago, this probably isn't even an email, because it's also think of the paradigm shift in nicotine over
in the
last
perception of
25
nicotine.
years. Yeah. Like, so, for a long time, this was just part of culture. I don't know how old he is.
That's true.
So,
there was no age in the letter. That's true.
So I would say you found somebody that's amazing. Mm-hmm. This isn't a threatening addiction like Trisha pointed out earlier.
I mean, and look, it is a threat to his health. We do need to identify that. Nicotine is not a health.
I'm not a doctor here. I don't know about nicotine.
What am I thinking?
I think it's the tobacco, like the tar of tobacco and everything. So I mean, nicotine, I'm sure probably does stuff to your heart.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's not as bad as.
It's not like cigarettes.
Well, actually, let me rephrase that, because he's incorporating Zen. I don't want to get a Surgeon General warning on a Holy Matrimony podcast. So erase what I said, because there's obviously more to it than. But either way, yes.
Anything you're consuming in excess, there's going to be some sort of health.
My point is not unhealthy to the relationship.
Yes.
That was what I was saying. That's what you were saying. It's not a danger to the relationship.
If you told me he watched porn and was addicted to something like that, different thing.
So you're saying he may want to change. I would say leave an opening there to be supportive, not don't point fingers, don't push that change, just be a supporting, loving partner. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't be forceful. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
When are you going to quit?
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that.
Well, do that with any addict, and I'll speak from experience. Like I got fingers wagged in my face. Oh, you low down, no good drunk, and I'm like, no, I'm not. And then I went out and drank over it. Like,
I think to put a bow on this, you found an amazing person. It's not an addiction that could threaten the relationship.
But here's the thing: above everything else, not even is addiction to nicotine a deal breaker. The ultimate deal breaker is: does God want you to be with this man? Hit your knees, pray sincerely, and ask for guidance there. Because let's imagine he had no addiction to nicotine whatsoever. If God tells you it's not the right person, you better run and not look back. If he has an addiction to nicotine and God says, yes, proceed, move forward and go, then we go. Like, I think sometimes we put all these limits and we put the checklists in place, and we think that if we can get the checklist that church said that we need to do, and there's value to that, where you don't want to be with somebody who's too, wayward, but it's also like God is the ultimate authority, and we all have shortcomings. We all have hang-ups and bad habits. And it's like, if he, had signed off at the first hint of, let's say jealousy, that's something I struggled with a lot in the beginning of our relationship. If you just called it, but we felt called to be together in spite of our weaknesses and our bad habits and hang-ups. And I think that there has been, now we have a shared testimony about moving through jealousy as a couple, and we'll probably talk about that in an episode, is moving through my jealousy issues. And I think that there can be testimony found in that as well. So I just want to caution anybody that, like, we can check all the right boxes, we can, not check the wrong ones, but if it's not the right person God has planned for you, it doesn't matter anyway. So, like, what does God say? Does God say to be with him? Then whatever even we say is irrelevant. He's the ultimate authority. He knows.
There you go. I think that's the perfect way to put a bow on it.
Tie that bow. Ship it off.
I'm James Fenimore.
And I'm Trisha Fenimore.
This has been Holy Matrimony. We'll see you next week.